So, greetings everyone to the Jeffco PTA board meeting and program on restart. So thank you so much for joining us. We have a couple business items to take care of since we are a legal business organization. First one is the approval of agenda and the July minutes. So here's our agenda. Can I get one person from Jeffco PTA board to motion to approve this agenda?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
I second.
All right. If anyone opposes that, can you please make your voice known? Then we'll approve by consensus. The next thing we're going to go through is our financial report. Debbie Carpenter, please unmute yourself.
Okay. Just real quickly, really the only thing we spent money on was our charitable solicitations and our business registrations with the Secretary of State for $20. So that if you look at the treasurer's report, you'll see that. And balances as of 8/22/2020, $18,794.78 in checking. I switched over. This is all membership money and donations from Cheddar Ups. It hadn't hit the bank yet. So we have a total of $19,568.78 in checking, $57.80 in that little savings that we had to open, and Jane Hammond restricted funds $5,916.68 for a total of $25,543.26. Any questions?
All right. Thank you so much, Debbie. We appreciate your hard work. Debbie's also already taken care of all of our legal filings for the year with the Secretary of State and our financial review. All of those things are taken care of. The next one is fall conference and membership. Jen Granberry, Vice President of Membership, could you unmute yourself and talk to us?
Yes, ma'am. Hi. We are doing the fall conference virtually this year. Sorry, we're fixing volume. We have 4 Saturdays now. The 12th, 19th, 26th, and October 3rd. We have sessions every Saturday. The registration will come out, I believe, later this week or beginning of next week. We're working super hard to get everything together for that. And it's going to be a really cool virtual event where we're going to be able to record all of the sessions. So if you can't make it to the whole thing, then that's totally cool. It'll be up on the website when we're done. We have an awesome AAVP, Amy Sapphire, who's going to open up each day with a yoga class to get us all stretching and kind of together and ready to learn, which we super appreciate. She's a total awesome rock star for that. And we have a lot of really great sessions this year. We've got some amazing people that are going to come and run some sessions. We've got Dr. Joyce Brooks, and we've got Dr. Johnson and Julie Wilkin and lots of others that I just can't think of off the top of my head. We've got some suicide trainings and some reflection trainings and all of our officer trainings. So look for more information on that. The fall conference virtually this year will look different for sure, but it's going to be PTA strong and it's going to be awesome.
So there's thank you. I just want to say a huge thank you. You have worked really, really hard. I know there's some other members of the team too. Kay and Jonna and Katie will be helping soon as well. You've done a phenomenal job while also taking care of membership right now. So it's overwhelming, and being mother to 3 during a pandemic, it's a lot.
School for 3 and remote has been much better than I thought. I just want to shout that out. Thank you to Jeffco for making it easier than I was scared that it was going to be. So we're all alive, we're all well, and we're all sober. So there you go. That's a So also for membership, we are up to 40 members, which I think is pretty awesome. At this time last year, we were only at 28. So I feel like we're coming on strong. We're going to do another membership push in September. And I'm going to also remind some high school kids that they're eligible for scholarships if they're Jeffco PTA members. And so it's all looking really well in this virtual world. It's gonna work.
It is phenomenal. And now I would like to make sure that we get everybody introduced here. Christopher Shu, is our interim superintendent, or almost interim superintendent, and former chief of staff for secondary. He has a lot of members of his team here. Julie Wilkin is here, Dr. Tom McDermott, Renee Nicothodis, Dr. Susan Leach, David Bell, so from HR. I'm trying to make sure that I have everybody. Did I miss someone? Okay.
I think you covered it.
All right. Well, Christopher, I am your clicker, so please go forward and tell me how I can help you.
Thank you, Shauna. Appreciate it. And hi, everyone. As Shauna said, Christopher Shue, interim superintendent, soon to be transitioning, much like the language that Shauna used. And I just want to say, thrilled to be here. And I did see somebody take a drink of some white wine, so way to go, PTA. This is a good crowd. Good crowd. I can already tell this is going to go really well tonight. And thank you for introducing the members of Jeffco Cabinet who are here today. Thank you for the invitation to come and let us talk about what's happening with the restart plan in Jeffco. And then if you got some questions, we'd be happy to answer those questions and clarify what's happening. So I'll start this off and just take us back in time a little bit. And some of you may have forgotten, but back on March 12th, something that was called the coronavirus or COVID came into Colorado. And at that point in time, the school districts up and down the Front Range and in the state decided to turn to 100% remote. And at that point in time, there was a lot of new that was going on. And school districts at that point in time began to adjust and adapt. Students did that, families did that, our teaching staff did that. And it was powerful work, it was intense work, and people did the best they could do at the time with what they had. And as of course we moved through the spring, we learned a lot about the remote environment, learned a lot about each other, learned a lot about student learning. And then we moved into the summertime. At that point in time, our school board, we have 5 school board representatives, and they put forth a resolution. And that resolution said that in Jeffco Public Schools, we will maximize in-person learning. And at that point in time, because of what was happening around us in the stay-at-home order, the COVID numbers did begin to decline. So things were looking really strong for us to return in a full capacity. At that point in time in Jeffco, we started building contingency plans or restart plans. So some of you might have known that. We released our first plan, and then we released another one, and then we started getting some feedback on it, and that led through the summertime. And then we had a bit of a shift when COVID levels started to increase. So we changed the plan a little bit, and that really brings us into present day with our students who have just returned back to us in a remote environment this past Monday. So just wanted to take you back in time and bring you up to present day. So we are working on the restart plan, and we continue to work on our restart plan, and we continue to adapt it. So today, the members of Cabinet, we're just going to talk you through different parts of the restart plan, and we've got our experts here to talk through that, answer questions like I said. Just know that our restart plan is about quality, and it's about safety. It's about quality of education for our students, and it's about safety of our students and our staff. And then it's also about safety for our families and community, because we're all together in this when it comes down to COVID-19. So there's a little bit of a bio about me. You can see here in front, and some people don't know me. So Shauna just asked if I could talk a little bit about me. So my mom said it was okay that I do that. She said I'm not supposed to talk about myself, but I think in this situation I should. So once again, Christopher Shue, grew up in Wisconsin, a small town, and born and raised there. And then I moved to Minneapolis, and I'm a Golden Gopher from University of Minnesota, studied in Spain, and came back and collected a couple of degrees, taught in Wisconsin for a bit, and then moved to Colorado for 2 reasons: the music of John Denver and the mountains. And I've been living here since 1994, and I love it. And I taught at Mullen High School. Then I came into Jeffco in 2000. So this is my 21st year in Jeffco. You can see I've served in different capacities in Jeffco. It is one of the most wonderful things about Jeffco is you can continue to move along in your career and challenge yourself and find all these incredible opportunities right here in Jeffco. And as you can see, I've served in different capacities, and usually about every 5 or 6 years, it's time for me to move on and challenge myself again. So I have wife in Jeffco. She teaches here at Three Creeks K-8. And then we have a younger daughter who also is a student at Three Creeks, a 3rd grader. and then we have a sophomore at Ralston Valley High School. So as we like to say in the Shoe family, we are all Jeffco. So that's my bio, and we're going to move into our presentation now. Sean, I think we'll just say next slide, if that works for you.
Yep.
And I just want
you can nod.
all right, and I just want to take this moment just to thank Shauna. Shauna is really active in Jeffco and has been for a long time. Shauna is at our board meetings and steadfast, along with Jonna Levine. And I know John is here too. It's good to see her. So thank you, you two, and then everyone else who's involved with the Jeffco PTA. You are a huge support for us, and we need you and rely on you. And thank you for giving us information and letting us know what is going on in Jeffco. Thank you for supporting all of our schools. And we know that it's one of those wonderful democratic institutions, the PTAs, and we just appreciate everything you're doing and what you do for our schools.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to do this for us tonight and answer questions.
All right. And we're going to turn this over to Dr. Tom McDermott, who's been one of the principal architects of the Restart Plan.
Great. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Shauna. Just to kind of orient us to the structure of our conversation, we'll talk a little bit about the principles that are the foundation of our Restart Plan, some of the processes that we've engaged in to arrive at our plans, and then what our plans currently are. Then Julie Wilkin will take us through some of the health and mitigation strategies that are within our plan. And then Dr. Susan Leach, as well as Renee Nicothodis, will talk about some of the things that we've learned from our experiences with remote learning from the spring, and improvements and supports that we have planned for those students who have chosen remote learning, as well as for our secondary students who have remote learning as part of their plan. So Sean, if you can go to our next slide, please. So really, all of the plans that we have articulated to this point are based off of these 4 health principles, these 4 virus mitigation strategies: place, space, people, and time. Place, how can we maximize the amount of airflow and fresh air? Space, maximizing the amount of space between individuals, social distancing. People, limiting the number of interactions that individuals have. And then time, limiting the time in which individuals are interacting. These 4 health and safety principles are directly from Dr. Mark Johnson from Jeffco Public Health, who has been a partner with us as we've collaborated on how is it that we can open up our schools, provide the educational experiences for students in the safest way possible. So all of our plans are based off of these 4 health and safety principles. Next slide, please, Shauna. So I mentioned all of our plans and all of our models. Throughout this entire process, we've articulated 3 different learning models that we are prepared to deploy as the virus changes within our community, or if we are in a different reality related to the virus. So we have 100% in-person capacity model, which is similar to normal school. We have a hybrid model, and we have a 100% remote online model. And as I said, we've been working on and fleshing these out, aligned with the 4 principles that I previously mentioned, and are prepared to deploy any of these learning models dependent on the health and environment in Jeffco. Next slide, please. Just to take us back a little bit to what have been our phases of planning, engagement, and feedback to arrive to where we are now. So back in May, we published what we refer to as the draft. That draft was an internal document that went to all Jeffco employees, and it was organized into 12 different sections. And it asked all of our employee groups for feedback, and those who have inside knowledge of the workings of the organization, to identify areas for feedback and improvement within those 12 sections. From there, we incorporated feedback from staff and shared what we refer to as the model with our broader community. Many of you probably saw and provided feedback on that model. That was released on May 22nd and had an opportunity for feedback from the community. Along with along with the feedback that we incorporated there, we also stood up what we refer to as testing teams. So teams of teachers, classified employees, principals, to really run kind of what we refer to as tabletop scenarios to see if the plans that we had articulated were actually feasible. Could these actually work? So they ran scenarios. Following that and incorporating the feedback that we got from the community, we articulated our plan on July 8th. On July 8th, our restart plan articulated 100% in-person option for all students pre-K through 12. You'll notice then for the monitor and adjust, we adjusted that to where we are currently, is that we have an option for 100% in-person learning for students in grades pre-K through 5th grade. And then for students in grades 6 through 12, we have a hybrid option. And that was based off of, if you go to the next slide, please, Shauna, excuse me. That was based off of some things that changed in the community related to the virus. So we saw an increase in cases in Jeffco from July 8th to July 23rd, where we made the changes to have instead of 100% in person for all grades, rather a hybrid at the secondary level. There was an increase of cases in Colorado and in Jeffco, as well as across the nation. We also received clearer guidance from the Colorado Department of Education and the Colorado Department of Health and Environment that led us to modify what we had published on July 8th. So this slide here really just articulates kind of a summary of what was articulated on July 3rd. So where we are currently is we have remote learning in place from August 24th was our first day through September 4th. And that is a kind of a combination of all students engaging in remote learning, as well as orientation for students with the ability to enter into our buildings and learn, how will school look differently, learn about some of the health and mitigation strategies that Julie's gonna go into in a little bit more detail. If you go to the next slide, please. And this was the slide actually that I was looking for here, but these are some of the shifts that, I'm sorry, Tony, can you go back just for 1 second, just to underscore? These are the shifts that from the publication of July 8th to the changes that we made on the 23rd. These were some of the elements that led to that decision to change that model at the secondary level. Now, next slide, please. And then one of the things we often hear is, at what point will we switch models? And really, we rely on the expertise of Jefferson County Public Health. As I mentioned, Dr. Mark Johnson has been a wonderful partner in helping us to understand the ways that we can open schools as safely as possible. We are currently in level 2, as determined by Jefferson County Public Health, the Safer at Home, which aligns with the model that I've previously described at hybrid at the secondary, 100% option for pre-K through 5. We would move into any of the other educational environments if the health and virus situation within Jefferson County moved to any of the levels that you see here that would align with the different educational models that are articulated there. Next slide, please. Okay, now it is my great pleasure to turn it over to Julie Wilkin to talk through some of the health and mitigation strategies that are in our restart plan. So Julie.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you. For those of you that didn't meet me prior to, my name is Julie Wilkin. I'm the Director of Health Services for Jeffco Public Schools. So I think this is a big point that everybody wants to talk about is the health and mitigation strategies. So I'm going to go through several different mitigation strategies that will be incorporated into our school environment this year. And hopefully we get all of your answers inside of this presentation. But if not, I'm always happy to answer more questions. Shauna, can you go ahead, please? Thank you. So first and foremost, one of our main mitigation strategies that we keep hearing a lot about is masks. So our default in our district is to wear a mask. There will be exceptions at times for underlying health conditions when kids and staff are obviously eating or drinking. That will be a quick time where they can take their mask down. And that is an area where we will allow also a few times a day to have a mask break that will be outside mostly with 6 feet of social distancing. So we wanted to make sure that kids had that availability to be outside during recess and be 6 feet apart and give them the break that they need in masks. We will also have additional PPE equipment provided for staff. Some cases there will be N95s depending on the role, but in addition to this, we were also given just recently a huge stock of KN95s, which are sort of the Chinese version, came from China, of N95s. They are the same mask, the same type of mask, and there's going to be one given per week to each employee. And we did already get a shipment of those in. So those are also being delivered and out to all the schools, including face shields, gloves, hand sanitizer, and those supplies will be given to students who also require them if there is a chance that the students will not be able to wear a mask. We will be talking to their physicians, trying to understand if they can't wear a mask, what else can they do? How else can we provide protection for them, and how else can we provide protection for those who will be taking care of them and those who are around them? We do have our conduct code, our student conduct code that will be in place, code of conduct that will does say that if you are in person that you must wear a mask and you must also adhere to all of our health and mitigation strategies. So we will make sure that that is in place this year. Also, employees will be signing a professional responsibility in the beginning of the school year to also adhere to all of the new health and mitigation strategies, including mask wearing. So one of our next social mitigation strategies is social distancing. Schools and staff will obviously practice social distancing, also be utilizing face masks and face coverings and other protective equipment. Definitely when 6 feet of distance is not possible to maintain. We know that there are going to be times during the school day where you cannot abide by social distancing. We know that there will be small groups. We know that there will be times that kids interact with one another, not on purpose, but maybe on purpose, but also during group activities. During that time period, we want to make sure that we are still installing that the face coverings and masks are a must, even for the ages that are the elementary ages from 10 and below. Some people have asked why do the elementary kids need to be wearing them if that's not what the public health order mandates, and that is because we feel that it is very important in our district to make sure that masks are essential throughout all age groups. So we want to make sure that that is one of our main mitigation strategies that we enforce. The hybrid model at the secondary level does allow us to achieve social distancing for those grades. And then I know there was a question that somebody had asked about school buses. School buses, we will have 1 student per seat. This does take our total count for the school buses down to 24 or 25 per bus. We do need to do that because most of our bus rides are somewhere between 20 and 25 minutes. And we want to make sure that those students will be wearing face coverings while they're on the bus and also have a seat to themselves so that they have the distance between them from one side to the other side. So that is the reason why we are doing that. One of the third mitigation strategies that we will be using in our school system is the use of student cohorts. Teachers will work with these cohorts of students in all levels by a school principal or other administrator in order to limit the contact between groups. So we want to make sure that even though we will have a few different cohorts in the 6th through 12th grade settings, we want to make sure that we are sticking to minimizing those cohorts to approximately 4 per day, and that we will have a good way to, if and when there is a positive case, we will be able to do our own contact tracing, which is a form of it inside the school district, to make sure that we are able to go back and see where those students are, where they were, who they were with, and then make sure that we can quarantine quickly. So we will be utilizing the cohort strategy to obviously detect and contain, isolate, and then quarantine all of the students that we need to. So pre-K through 5th grade, obviously these students have a better opportunity to be within the same cohort of students for most of the day. Go ahead, next slide, please. Hand washing and hand hygiene. We have installed multiple bottles of hand sanitizer throughout the school buildings. We are also having hand washing built into the schedules during elementary, and well, for all the grades actually. They will be doing a couple different times a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, and they'll be given the chance to wash their hands and also use the hand sanitizer on top of that. We've been trying to enforce that for all students and staff. We always want to hand wash when possible, but hand sanitizing is also, in addition to, so we don't want it to take the place of hand washing and that importance of that, but we want to be able to also have that available. Sometimes it will be quicker for them to utilize the hand sanitizer in and out of the classroom. If they're heading out to recess, we want them to be able to hand sanitize prior to recess, and then also when they come back in from recess. So we're going to make sure that those are incorporated into certain times of the day. So one of the mitigation strategies that we have is employee and student COVID testing. The way that we will be utilizing this is that we have provided for resources for testing for symptomatic staff and students. We do have a good relationship with Stride Community Health Center, and when we know that an employee is symptomatic or a student is symptomatic, we will be sending them to one of the testing sites that's on Jefferson County Public Health's website. With Stride, we have a direct relationship with them where we'll be able to ask that student to go up to in the line. Hopefully the line isn't too long, but if it is, we're going to ask that they be given some priority in that line so that they can get tested quickly, and we will hopefully get the results back also quickly. The district will reimburse employees for out-of-pocket expenses if they do incur private testing. We know that most of the private testing that takes place is covered by insurance. If a family or a staff member does not have insurance, we will pick up that out-of-pocket expense for them to be tested. Go ahead and next slide, please. Thank you. Cleaning is also one of our mitigation strategies. Classrooms and common areas will be cleaned regularly and disinfected and sanitized according to the protocols that were developed by the custodial department. Cleaning will be completed primarily by custodial staff. However, we are asking that all staff be involved in this because this is something that we believe is important throughout the day. We want people to jump in. We feel like this is an all hands on deck mitigation strategy that everybody can help with. And even though we'll have custodial staff doing additional cleaning, it will be everybody's responsibility to sufficiently clean materials and supplies, because we want to make sure that we are in a clean environment as much as possible. We will be disinfecting between cohorts if there's hard surfaces that can be sprayed down with our disinfectant. And then obviously a lot of students will be eating in their classrooms, so we want to make sure that we are sanitizing properly on top of the desks and the areas where they will be eating. Next slide, please. Employee contact. We also want to make sure that our employees are practicing 6 feet of social distancing from everyone, from each other. This includes during their lunch break, their planning periods, in staff meetings, professional development. We here at Jeffco have asked most staff meetings to be virtual meetings and remote when it's possible. One of the reasons we want to do that is we want to make sure our employees are kept safe and also kept in a situation where if they are having an all staff meeting, we don't want all the employees in one room at one time. That could wipe out an entire staff. So we've asked if we could do some virtual meetings instead to take the place for some of these professional development meetings. So we're hoping that this will obviously improve over time, but we want to make sure that they have the ability to do that when there's times for staff meetings or professional development. Also, when we're going to make sure that they have the protective equipment when they are in person and together. And the screening process and medical safe rooms, lots of questions around this. And please know that I'm here to answer this. This slide presentation certainly won't answer all of these today, but anytime if we go past today, please make sure that you reach out to me, because this is the part that gets really confusing and can be really difficult to understand. We will be doing daily health checks and screenings, so we'll be taking a temperature and asking a question. So every staff and every student who enters the building, we will be asking them, are you sick? Are you currently sick with a cough, a sore throat, or a runny nose? Then we'll be taking their temperatures. So any individual who doesn't successfully pass that symptom screening, they will be escorted then by a staff member down to the medical safe room. And this is a different room from our health room. Our health room is going to be separate. We need to keep the health room a little bit separate from the medical safe room because there's a lot of activities that go on in our health rooms on a daily basis. We're administering medications. We might be doing some diabetes care, and we want to make sure that all of those normal activities that happen in the health room continue to happen. So we designated a specific area in each school. Some schools look different from others. Some are smaller rooms, some are bigger rooms, but those will be the medical safe rooms. We have trained the employees that will be taking over and managing those. Primarily in most schools, it will be their health aide that will be managing and taking care of the medical safe room. So specifically, we do have several staff that will be covering and doing screenings in the morning time. There might be several different entry points depending on how the school decides to break up the students that are entering the building. They could be done by grade levels, they could be done by alphabetical order. You might have even seen in some of the schools where they've broken it down not only by grade level, but also time-wise, they've broken it down alphabetically. So there's different things going on at different schools depending on where their entry points are and how many students they will have in person. But for all of that, you can specifically anticipate that health aides may be part of the screening process. You may have paras, maybe campus supervisors, the office staff and administrators will be doing and conducting all of those screenings. They have already been trained. They're getting all of their supplies and they're ready to go. So I think we're in a good spot right now for all of that to happen quickly within the next few weeks. Next slide, please. The quarantining and school closures. So we do have a quarantine process that we have developed with Jefferson County Public Health. However, during those quarantining processes, there may be times where there is building closures made in collaboration with Jefferson County Public Health, and we will go on individual circumstances. So each and every time we will be looking at every individual case to see where this might differ and how we can protect all of the direct contacts around this person who may be symptomatic or who may test positive. But minimally, if a student or staff member does test positive, the other students in their cohorts that they've had direct contact with will be quarantined for a period of 14 days. At that period of time, we will transition into remote learning also during that time period, and it will be a quick and hopefully seamless transition over to remote learning. But we will be working, my team with Department of Health Services will be working with the school administration and the communications department to make sure that families are notified when they are quarantined and when they cannot come back to school. So we'll be working really fast and quickly to make sure that everybody knows at that period of time that they might have had an exposure and they will be quarantined for the next 14 days to monitor for their symptoms. So one of the other mitigation strategies that we've talked a lot about is our ventilation. And our ventilation systems, we have made improvements and modifications to all of our ventilation systems to reduce the virus spread. Jeffco Public Schools also has a top-notch central and ventilation system in every building that's centrally monitored and controlled. So one thing that I learned a lot about this year from facilities department was about the amount of air that they are allowed to let into the systems. And they've increased it by 50 to 100% above the prior levels that we've had in years past. So they are bringing in fresh air and they're renewing it, refreshing it, and filtering it 7.5 to 10 times per hour. These systems specifically designed air filters to provide the maximum amount of filtration while not impacting the air changes to the rooms. They are inspected and changed on a regular basis. And another thing that we're doing is checking the temperatures. We want to make sure that they are lower so we can provide a more comfortable environment for students and staff. We know that wearing masks, as you guys probably all know as well, when you have a mask on, it does create quite a bit of heat, and sometimes it's uncomfortable for people to wear during long periods of time. And some of the schools have received upgrades to their ventilation systems as part of the capital improvement plan, but all of our schools have been looked at for ventilation and ventilation improvements. Next slide, please. I will pass this on to Mr. David Bell so he can talk about the employee support and protection and leaves for and insurances.
Thank you, Julie Wilkin. I am David Bell. I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer for the school district and have been working, of course, with the educators and staff members that you all value so much, obvious by your role and participation here tonight. We understand how important each staff member is to your children and to our school district and community. And of course, we're looking at how we can support individuals through the COVID-19 issues as we approach the start of school. Many questions have come about what happens with employees when they may contract the COVID illness, what happens with district benefits, leave of absence, sick leave, etc. So our basic component here is we have a safety net, a very thorough safety net of sick leave and sick leave support should somebody have short-term illness with COVID-19. Now, first and foremost, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act is a new act that came into play in March, and it supplies each individual who contracts COVID or is taken out of the workplace due to quarantine for testing or treatment, etc., with 80 hours or 2 full weeks of paid leave, paid sick time, not from their own accrual. So maybe somebody has no accruals available because they're a brand new teacher or a brand new staff person. This comes into play and supports them through that early stage of COVID-19 testing and or quarantine and or treatment. Once we move from those 80 hours, if somebody's out for a bit longer time, they can use their own personal accruals. That would be sick leave, vacation leave for some staff members, personal leave. Should that become exhausted, then we have an emergency sick leave bank that comes into play as well. In the spring, as we were approaching middle of March, we saw a line of sight to what might be coming down for us in our future. And we worked with the associations, both JCEA and JESPA, to arrange for donations to an emergency sick leave bank where individuals who donate 1 day of sick leave are able to later, if necessary, make a claim for 35 days of coverage for sick leave should they become ill with COVID-19 or experience a need for quarantine and testing, etc. So like the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, the sick leave bank does the same kind of protection just later in the process. A last piece in here now is the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act, a Colorado act that was passed into law this summer and goes into effect in January. And that again supplies staff members with 80 hours of paid time should they be stricken with COVID-19 or testing, quarantine, etc. That comes at the tail end of all these other provisions, and it's kind of meant for primarily people who have small amounts of accruals and they aren't a part of a sick leave bank. There's this one extra protection out there to support our staff members. We want to make sure we give opportunity for folks to be away from work for quarantine and testing and early stage treatment throughout so that they don't have concerns about caring for their family or losing their position. This this safety net is there to allow them to keep their income moving forward while they're becoming healthy and able to return to the workplace. In addition, we have a series of insurances, short-term disability and long-term disability, that come into play for anybody who is on a leave of absence or has to be away from work, cannot work. Short-term disability is income replacement, and that works in concert with all of our sick leave times and all of these benefits to make sure we can keep income whole for our staff should they again contract COVID-19. Julie mentioned earlier around some symptomatic testing that we have a relationship with Stride to provide that symptomatic testing. Our insurance vendors, both Aetna and Kaiser, they are required by law currently to provide free testing as well for symptomatic individuals. They also, by choice, are covering most cost for treatments, not all, but most costs as of this time. That can change over time, but currently we're happy that we have those relationships with those two insurance vendors. And the last layer in regards to testing Julie mentioned as well is reimbursement for anybody who doesn't have their testing provided by our relationship with Stride or through our personal insurance vendors. There's always a question around workers' compensation, life insurance, et cetera, and those are some extreme situations, of course, that we hope we don't see at all during this particular period. And with careful safety mitigation efforts and following all those safety precautions, we believe we won't reach that point. You know, workers' compensation could come into play if somebody does contract an illness or have some other injury in the workplace. And of course, our life insurance costs are there to benefit employees should we ever come to that point. There are a number of other supports in place through the district, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have as we go through the evening.
All right, who's next?
It may be me, Shauna, if you want to advance to the next slide.
Oh, yes.
No, that's not me.
This is, I believe, Renee. You were going to take this, right?
Oh, you're still on mute, Renee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about some changes that we're planning for remote learning. In the spring, we gathered a lot of feedback from our families, from our teachers, students, and this is how we've kind of organized those trends that we found in that feedback. So one of the improvements you'll see is a common learning management system that'll be used across the district by grade. So parents won't have to juggle 3 different systems to support their students. So you'll use Seesaw, Pre-K2, and Google Classroom for 3rd through 12th, and also Schoology at the secondary level. So that should help manage that a little bit better. We've also put in the requirement that students will receive synchronous learning every day at a specific time of day. So teachers will build schedules for their students and send those out to let them know when they need to be at a certain time in front of the computer for their learning. And then there will be other activities that will be assigned for practice, small group guided reading kinds of interventions, things that would be done in smaller groups or independently outside of those synchronous learning opportunities. So we'll see a lot more face-to-face interaction between teachers and students, and that was something that we really wanted to tackle with some of these improvements. The expectation right now is 3 hours of synchronous learning that we're planning for. That may vary by grade a little bit and how it's broken out during the day, but that's the target we're shooting for that in real-time learning. So each week the students will interact with their teachers face-to-face for assessments. We'll be able to do that both in person and remotely. All of our district assessments will be set up to be utilized in that manner. We'll have that data that we can start to really identify any learning gaps that may have occurred from this time away from school in this current context. And then school-based staff will be reaching out to parents. They'll be giving opportunities for you to ask questions, have town hall meetings, fireside chats. But the expectation is a weekly ongoing communication with families to get feedback, check in, and provide information. And then also our teachers last week spent 4 days, almost 4 full days of professional learning, working with the LMS, planning for instruction, building out their units, and really getting set up and organized for the year. So I think all of these things will add to a much improved remote learning experience this fall. Okay, I'll hand this over to
Okay.
each.
Hi, I'm Susan Leach. I'm the Chief Student Success Officer. I'm excited to tell you about things that are happening in my division. And those departments include Julie Wilkins Health Services, but also special education and gifted and talented, student services, which are all your school counselors and social emotional learning specialists and 504. And then student engagement office. So I'm going to start with special education, and I want to tell you about some systemic mechanisms that we put in place, but I'm also going to preface this by saying that the hallmark of special education is individualization. So if your child is on an IEP and you have questions and concerns, my first recommendation is always to start with your school, but also know that if you still have concerns or you're not getting your concerns resolved or something doesn't sound right, there are other places you can call, and I'll talk about that in a second, but please know that there are answers out there for you, and we want you to reach out if you're having issues. So one of the most important things I think we put into place is the special education community support line, and I'm going to give you that phone number. It's 303-982 6682, and that's also available on our website. But anyone, whether you're a teacher or a parent, a community member, if you have any questions or concerns about special education, it doesn't just have to be about what our current issues are with restarting school, but anything about special ed, please call that number and someone will get back to you within 24 hours. Right now they're doing it much more quickly than that, but within 24 hours, and they will help you figure out the answers or get you an answer to whatever your concern is. So that's one mechanism you can use. The other thing the special education department is doing is offering some community forums, and they're virtual community forums this year. 5 were scheduled. 1 has already happened a couple weeks ago. There are 2 sessions each time, a 4:30 session in English, a 5:30 session in Spanish. Both of those special sessions have sign interpreters present. So they will be covering a variety of issues. You'll see the advertisements for them come out through social media, but you'll also see them on our website. There is a link where you can submit questions that you'd like answered, and they'll be gauging those questions to see what topics they should be covering. The other thing that they have done is really enhance the special education website. So in addition to just updated information, there are all kinds of resources, and I would say that many of those resources would be helpful for any parent. So there are resources for parents whose children are returning to school. For example, social stories. If you know what social stories are, they're kind of like a teaching story that present a scenario that helps the child get accustomed or learn and practice what to do in a specific scenario. So some of the things we have on that website are social stories related to hand washing, social distancing, what is it like to wear a mask? What is symptom screening? Many kids could benefit from those, not just students in special education. There are also a number of resources for students who are engaging just in remote learning. So parents can read articles and resources on setting up a schedule. How do I manage behavior at home now that my child's at home all day? And so, as I said, these are resources that are great for any parent and any student, but they're housed under our special education website. We did a lot over the summer in terms of field testing personal protective equipment. We did that a number of ways. Some of our staff you would see if you were in the Ed Center, they were actually wearing them around during the day to see whether they fit well, whether they were providing the support they needed, whether it was comfortable for you to wear for several hours at a time. We field tested masks that are completely clear. Actually, I was going to bring one so show you. So they're completely clear. So students who lip read can see their teacher's face. Many times we have students or staff that we need to be able to see their mouth moving, and so those masks facilitate that. So we did a lot of field testing with those over the summer. We also ran a very modified version of our extended school year program, which is some extra schooling that some students with disabilities qualify for. That allowed us to really test a lot of the procedures and policies that we would be using when school returned. And what we found were that the students adapted very quickly. So we heard a lot of people, and if you're on social media, you saw this, a lot of people saying, my kid would never wear a mask. My kid's not going to sit in class with a mask on. Guess what? They did it. And it was the students who were reminding the teachers, hey, don't forget, you're supposed to be 6 feet apart. Don't forget to keep your mask on. So the students adapted very, very quickly. And by the end of that 1 week, it was our teachers who were saying, we don't need remote. We can bring these kids in right away. And so for our students with the most significant disabilities, that's exactly what we're doing. So if your student has a significant disability, they're in a program called a center program. And that means that they need some, there you go, Julie's showing the mask. They need some pretty significant supports. And so all of the students in that program are students with significant disabilities. As you can imagine, these are the students who really lost the most ground when we went to remote learning for a couple different reasons. One, they didn't have the adaptive skills that their non-disabled peers have. The other thing was that they really struggle with remote learning and they didn't know how to access it. And so they fell behind quite a bit. And what we found were many parents saying, we're just not even doing it because we can't do it. So what we decided to do this year was really prioritize those students. And we brought them back beginning this past Monday at the elementary level for full-time in-person 5 days a week. At the secondary level, 4 days a week. So they'll go Monday through Thursday. And if we can increase that to Friday at some point during the year, we're certainly receptive to doing that. But right now it made the most sense for at the secondary level to do Monday through Thursday. And a couple of the things that we're really focusing on during this extra time with them is shoring up some of those adaptive skills, those self-help skills so that they know how to stay safe in this current environment. But we're also working really hard with them on the remote learning skills so that if we are in a situation again where we have to go back to remote learning, they're going to be in a better place and better prepared to access those programs. I talked about the website for special education, and you can search in the toolbar up on the top of our Jeffco website, special education. You can also find links to that on the Restart Model website or on the Jeffco Restart website. So either one of those places, you should be able to access that. So I'm going to move on to gifted and talented because that's been another hot topic. So there was a proposal for something called the JVA 2.0 model that probably it was in concept was a really great solution to what some schools were experiencing in this environment where we had a lot of shifting of staff. Some staff needed for health reasons to work from home, and some staff were coming to work in person in the school. And then we had the same situation with students where many families were asking to stay at home and do remote, and some students were coming in. We have the same population of teachers and now trying to divide them to meet the needs of both an in-person and remote environment. And so there was a proposal that was brought forward about utilizing the coursework that had already been created through JVA. And that's somewhat limited in that they don't have a full complement of advanced courses like IB and advanced placement and certain honors courses. So they certainly don't have the breadth and depth of what our normal comprehensive schools have. But the idea originally was that we would take those courses that were already developed, and that teachers that were teaching remote could utilize those developed courses and also gain some mentorship from experienced teachers who have been working at JVA and doing remote instruction successfully. So between those two things, it felt like a great idea. There ended up, and this is, you know, very reflective of the times that we're in right now. So there's lots of this going around, as you know. There was some confusion over the model, some misinterpretation over what the model would look like and who would use it and how it would be utilized. And so there was confusion both coming from schools and to schools about the model. And so some parents were left with thinking that they would not have any advanced options for their students. I will be very transparent in that we're still problem solving through some issues. What we have found for our gifted and talented population, for those students who are in gifted and talented center schools, were that those schools have all pulled out and are not using that model because they didn't have the breadth of courses that those students needed. And so they found that in order to serve all of their students, they needed to go back to utilizing their own staff and their own resources. We are still trying to troubleshoot through some problems. And so what I would say to parents is, if you're one of those people that's being impacted, please reach out to us and let us know. If you're gifted and talented, you can certainly call the gifted and talented department. But if you're just looking for some other advanced courses or advanced honors coursework, we are problem solving through and trying to merge our resources to make sure that all students' needs are met. So we would definitely want to hear from you if you fall into that category and you're still feeling like you're missing something, and we will certainly try to problem solve through with you. I think you can go ahead and advance, Shauna. Let me get down.
All right. Well, we are to the
back up one. You just skipped over one slide.
Yeah, so sorry.
That's okay. I know we're getting stretched on time, and there are lots of questions that you want to get to. So I'll just say that our student engagement office covers a lot of different areas. So there's the equity, diversity, and inclusion work that's happening, particularly salient right now after the death of George Floyd. So we've seen a renewed focus on that, some renewed questions coming out for schools. So we're working to address all of those things. But that team also supports our at-risk students and students who are at risk for dropout. So you'll see that they also engage students who are in foster care and provide case management. They have Indian education, and so they're making connections. Normally this time of year is when we do a big kickoff of the year with our Indian population, and we usually do that at the gazebo. And since we can't this year, they're actually having a virtual welcome back week with an Indigenous film festival and some virtual activities. So trying to really meet all the needs of everyone just in a different way this year. Student services, as I mentioned before, are all of those things related to mental health and crisis response and social emotional learning. And they've been working hard all summer as well to develop protocols for schools for both remote and in person. So all of the things that people normally do in person, we do crisis response and counseling and suicide threats and suicide risk assessments. We're developing protocols, or have developed protocols for all of those. What if that happens in a remote environment? What if you see something through Zoom and you're concerned? What do you do? So we've had to develop protocols for all of those things. We're also anticipating that some of our students are going to come back with some regression, both in academics and behavior. And so we're providing lots of professional development to our staff to mitigate the effects of some of the things that may have been lost over the last several months. The other thing is that what we've heard from many teachers is what got them through with their students at the end of last year through all of that tumultuous time were the strong relationships that they had established earlier on in the year with their students. And so recognizing that we're working really hard on providing professional development for teachers, how do you get that relationships established, solid, strong right off the bat, so that we are in a really good place if and when we have to go remote, that we're keeping those connections with students and able to keep them buoyed. So we're also helping schools kind of resource map all the mental health supports that they have given the current situation, and that some are in person and some are remote, making sure that everybody's covered on both sides. And I think I already covered the guidance, so I think I'm done. I'm trying to rush through because I know you want to get to questions, but I think that's everything.
No, you did a great job. So everybody did a great job. So first of all, huge silent applause to our district staff. Really, really appreciate this. I've got two pages of questions that we are going to start with. And Kay is also taking notes. Kay, can you let me know if when we get to it, if you are okay reading those questions, or if you would like me to have it assigned to somebody else? So Kay, you make that decision there and put it in the chat, and I will then talk about that. But let's go ahead and start with this. Some of these I believe have been answered with your presentation, but we'll go ahead and start with it, and whoever wants to unmute themselves staff-wise to answer this, please go right ahead and do that. First one is, what metrics is Jeffco using if they need to go remote because of cases? Julie, this one might be you. Is it per school? So how many kids is it?
Sure, I can take that one. So there are several metrics that we're using. We are looking for, just so everybody knows, the state will be coming out with some new guidance actually on school closures and when we would be going to all remote. And that guidance should be out within the next week. So we do anticipate whatever we're talking about tonight, there's a possibility it could change. And we're glad that this guidance is coming out from the state, because it will align most school districts with one another, and it will give us some clarity of when to be going back and forth. For right now, we do have strategies that will be going back into remote learning, and what some of the mitigation and risk factors that we're looking at. There's different metrics that we're using, and I want to go back and talk about a little bit regarding some of those metrics. There is what we have taken a look at with the county health department is a few different things. One is the 14-day case rate that we've been looking at. We've been taking a look at what does that say, and where are we, and where do we need to be if we're going to open 100% in remote and in person. One of the other metrics that we have been looking at is what is the positivity rate? You keep hearing that all over the news, that it needs to be under 5%, needs to be under 5%. Jefferson County and our community has done a fantastic job. I think we owe a lot of thanks to our community and our county, because they have put us in a great place to be opening school. Our positivity rate is currently at 4.11%. And that's one of the better rates that is throughout the state of Colorado. Although Colorado has been going down and down, we're looking really good. Jefferson County is looking absolutely great. So one of the other metrics that we look at is hospitalization rate. We are also down 13% since last week in hospitalization rate. Some of that did go up for a little bit in the beginning of August and the end of July, but we're looking at a decrease of that since even from one week to 10 days ago. And then one of the other metrics that we obviously look at is, what is our PPE supply? Are we able to go 2 weeks, 2 months? How can we make that? Can we make that? Do we have enough in stock to make sure that we are able to stay in person? And right now we are still gathering all of our deliveries for our personal protective equipment, and we are getting them shipped out in multiple shipments and multiple deliveries to schools. So most schools have received at least 1 or 2 deliveries. There will be more deliveries coming within the next week. And those are all coming from our central COVID warehouse. We are actually in a great position over the course of the last few months to actually clear out a space at Quail, our Quail building. And we quickly set up a COVID warehouse, and we have stocked it from floor to ceiling. So it's really a great place to see. We have taken in, you know, pallets and pallets of different types of equipment, from masks to hand sanitizer to face shields to gowns and gloves. And we've been able to get those out to schools. So those are kind of the 4 different metrics that we're looking at as to when we go into what determines what phase we're in. And you saw the one slide that Tom McDermott had talked about, where it was the difference back towards the beginning when he was talking about the different phases and moving between the models of stay at home, safer at home, and protect our neighbors, and how that aligns with what we're doing for, you know, we would continue to have remote learning for all if we were stay at home. If we're currently in the safer at home, so we're doing a mixture of in-person and hybrid. And then obviously protect our neighbors. When we get to that phase, we'll be able to go back to 100% in person.
Okay.
That was kind of a long answer, but there was a lot of parts to answer that.
It was a complete answer. So that's what I think people care about most. The next one is, and I've talked to another parent something about this one too. So they would talk about, when would a school have to close and go remote? And I know the conversation that I had as well that kind of related to this one was when we start talking about lice, and we have to have multiple cases before we notify parents or close down. Can you explain how that's going to work? So, I mean, I already know in one school, you know, someone on a athletic team, one of the students did get COVID, and, you know, not really sure how that quarantine worked because it didn't go to everyone. So when would a school have to close and go remote, and who gets notified? So, and if your kid's in the school, but maybe not in the cohort, can you explain that?
Sure. So based on our quarantine process that we've developed with Jefferson County Public Health, and again, we will, even though this is sort of a broad overview of the quarantine process, we will take each case individually and be able to kind of do a little bit of case investigation to make sure that we are making the right choices of quarantining. So if a student was positive, and like, I don't know which case that you're referring to or what you're referring to exactly, but when somebody is positive, we're going to take a look at who their cohorts are and what kind of time that they spent around them. If they are testing positive, well, first and foremost, if they go home symptomatic, we are going to send them for testing. At that point in time, everything remains the same. So everybody who's in person stays in person. When the test result comes back, if it is positive, we will quarantine their cohort or cohorts. So if they're middle school, high school, and they have those 4 cohorts that we were talking about, we will quarantine those 4 cohorts. And we will quarantine them 14 days past the first day that that positive student was symptomatic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and just to be specific, that takes place through that contact tracing. And the student would have to be symptomatic around other students in that situation.
So for instance, if he's symptomatic on a Saturday and tells the school Monday morning, I'm not coming to school, the school nurse will follow up with the individuals who don't come to school, and they'll find out when were you first presenting with symptoms. Knowing that it's a Saturday, we will not need to quarantine those cohorts. But if it is a Monday and they were symptomatic around their cohorts, then we will be quarantining them for 2 weeks. So during that time period of that 2-week quarantine, they will go to remote learning.
Okay. All right.
And you wanted to talk about school closure. I can go on to that for a little bit. So if that same situation, if there's 2 students in 2 separate cohorts in one building within a 14-day period, that is considered an outbreak. So 2 2 cases is an outbreak within a 14-day period. If we have two separate cohorts that have a positive case inside of them, we will close the school for 24 to 48 hours, and we will clean the whole school. All students come back except for those 2 cohorts that were being quarantined.
Okay.
That's one scenario. Another scenario would be if we had 5% or more of the school in a 14-day period, 5% or more that were testing positive, then we would close the school actually for 28 days. We'd have to go through 2 full cycles of incubation period.
Okay. So this one sort of relates to that, and there was actually a question online at the same time. So about who is notified. So if a cohort that maybe my student is not in, is everyone at the school notified when this happens so we know? How does the school know if there's a positive case in the school? So
first and foremost, we want to make sure that we're quarantining the actual cohorts of the positive person. So that communication will go out, and like myself along with communications will work with the school administrative team to make sure that those cohorts are quarantined. The school will get a message simply stating that if there was a positive case, however, if you are getting this note and this letter at this time, you are not affected by this positive case. So
Okay.
the others will know, because we know that everybody will hear that and want to know if they were involved, but we want to reassure them that we have followed the processes, gone through the protocols, and been able to quarantine the right people. So if they are receiving that particular message, then they know that they have not been affected and they can come back to school.
Okay. The next one was about indoor air cleaners. Has Jeffco considered indoor air cleaners that have been proven to inactivate the COVID virus?
So indoor air cleaners, I think that's, if we're talking about air purifiers, we have allowed, if individual classroom teachers or different staff want to bring in their own air purifiers, we do have a facilities document that has guided our staff on what kinds and what to bring in. But, for all these improvements that we have made with our ventilation system, in most situations, they will not be needed. And the amount of fresh air that we're actually bringing in for the dilution factors will not be needed to be able to bring in those air purifiers. But if individual staffs have asked us that, and we have said, yes, you can bring them in based on these guidelines. Go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say, Shauna, if you're referring to the GPS system that I think was in one of the questions, I did have a conversation with Steve Bell, our Chief Operating Officer, and yes, our facilities team has looked into this, and in collaboration, again, with Jeffco Public Health, they have determined that it's not necessary for our ventilation systems, nor has there been any kind of demonstrable evidence that these systems have been effective to date.
Okay. Then I also want to ask, this is actually an interesting one too, because, and I'm going to relay to you another conversation I had yesterday with another parent. What will happen if a student or staff member intentionally refuses to properly wear a mask or follow social distancing requirements or comply with any other measure meant to keep everyone safe? And this actually relates also to a conversation I had with someone else where yesterday there was a staff member who told students that they had not worn a mask all summer and they were just fine, and it was nonsense. So kind of wondering about that.
We're not going to have that happen at all.
It just happened.
I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I was joking.
Right.
Of course, we do anticipate that to happen from time to time. with our code of conduct, like I had mentioned earlier, they are signing, when they're agreeing to come in person, they are agreeing to go by those health mitigation strategies. If they do not agree to that and they are intentionally doing that, we do have, and actually it was under the student engagement department and our discipline department with employee relations, they did create a COVID discipline structure. So there is a discipline matrix for that. And we have passed it out to all principals and community superintendents. They've asked a lot of questions about that. And there is a process for that. And as far as employees go, we're working with employees and supervisors on how to handle those too.
And one other point is we also have, through our HR department, David Bell, and working in conjunction with legal services, we do have a process whereby staff members can let us know that they're concerned about a colleague, possibly who's not following that and is not wearing a mask. So that is a process that we have, and it's not a tattling process, it's a safety process, and it's a caring process. And if we're hearing about that, we will follow up, and we've used the phrase gentle reminder to help people remember that I wear a mask, not necessarily for my protection, but I wear a mask for Miss Martha Tate, former Jeffco administrator. Martha, it's great to see you. So that's why I wear a mask. And those are the kind of reminders, and that's really what we're about, is it's about safety. And also if someone's not wearing their mask and they're refusing to, we do have our employee practices, and we do have this button, we're calling it, where you can go ahead and let us know. David, I don't know if you want to add on to that a little bit, but that's really.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask, I mean, in this particular case where, students were instructed this way by a staff member, where should that go?
So Shauna, you're describing that the conversation with the educator and the students made a kind of a gray area around the safety mitigation practices and such. So the button that Christopher refers to, it's a report form, and it's on our internal website, and primarily that would be used for staff to report anything from PPE shortages or a need for the additional support or someone not following the safety protocols. And again, not the finger pointing, but the bringing along. And it has turned into the conversations we've had very much knowledge based, and let's learn together and let's take care of each other. When it comes to students, they have different reporting mechanisms, a little bit tough in this situation you're kind of describing, but we always have the Safe to Tell as an option for all students, and would expect that to be the vehicle that students are familiar with and could use in that environment as well. It's going to take some time, just like when we all first started going back to the grocery store and put on masks and moved quickly through and bought limes instead of lemons because we were going too fast. That's how school is going to be for a couple of days as people kind of find their balance point and understanding with each other as adults, students to adults, and student to student.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. You've already spoken a little bit about testing being available and how you're doing that with staff. What about testing for students, or perhaps students and their families who can't afford it? Who need it?
Sure. So again, we will be following up, and the nurses will be providing resources for testing. Students who are symptomatic, who may not know some of the testing sites, we'll make sure that we do call ahead to some of those testing sites, especially if it's through Stride Community Health Center. We can call ahead and make sure that and set up any type of resource if they need, if they need to get there quickly. We'll make sure that we give them addresses and availability to get into the front of the line if we need to. So we have those set up, and we're ready to go with giving them the resources. We want to make sure that all students have access to that quickly.
Thank you. This was another great question. What are the plans to reach students who have limited access to Wi-Fi and broadband and/or devices with adequate online capability?
I can take that one. That gets back to our student engagement office, and they've provided outreach and case management for at-risk students. We work with technology. We've really tried to remove as many barriers as we can. When this first started, we had principals who were driving to their students' houses, making sure everyone had a laptop. But we've also done things like provide hotspots, connect families with cable companies that are offering either free or dramatically reduced rates so that they can have Wi-Fi in their homes. So we have another number of different initiatives that are happening, but also some people that are really dedicated to case management so that they're following up with families to make sure that they're getting what they need.
Also, would like to acknowledge the Jeffco Foundation and their director, Angela Baber. So she engaged and she really stepped up to support in the spring and continues to do so. So she has been supporting families and making sure that our families have internet connectivity.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Another question in here too. Can someone explain, there's lots of rumors going around. Can you explain what happened with Prospect Valley?
Hey, Shauna, I'll speak to that just a little bit here. Just being this is a greater Jeffco venue, I would request an invitation to the next PTA meeting at Prospect Valley, and I'd be happy to address those school-specific questions. But with a few minutes left, I just ask that we set that one aside for an individual school conversation. Happy to be there.
Okay. It seems the district is pushing parents to schools for answers, and often the schools don't have the answers, and maybe they're waiting for information from the district. Are there any plans to increase systemic communications? And I just want to acknowledge when we talk about this that there was supposed to be a summer somewhere in the last few months, and doesn't feel like any of us, including staff, have actually had one. I know staff members have been basically building the plane while flying it. So answer it with that in mind.
And I'll take that. So, and I like the metaphor of building the plane while flying it. And it is true. We are in a pandemic. If any of you have forgotten, we are in a pandemic. And I feel I've been talking a lot about, it feels like we are in an earthquake and the earth keeps moving under our feet, and we are steady people and we know what we're doing. But in a situation like this, it's hard to be steady when things keep on moving. Administrators are individuals, teachers are individuals who are well planned and plan ahead. And in these situations where the ground keeps moving under our feet, it is difficult to change. Shauna, you talked about communication, and this could be a district-wide conversation for communication, and this could be a school level. One of the beauties of Jeffco is we are a school district. We're also a district of schools. So as you know, you could go to a high school that has a really strong arts program, and they have a really strong theater program. You go to another school and they're all about band, or they're all about speech and debate. So depending on the needs of the community, that will tend to adjust. As we moved through the summer and schools were looking at their percentages, and we talked a little bit about that, where there could be a school where 60% of their students or families were choosing a remote environment as a preference. And then in that situation, they would have to be communicating with their community a little bit differently about possibly the courses they are offering, their ability to offer courses in a remote environment versus an in-person environment. And another school where they had fewer students choosing the remote, that could be a little bit different. So the communication at this point in time is moving quickly. What we found is we are ready to send a communication district-wide, and then when we're getting ready to send it, the game changes. And then so it is, well, let's pause right here. Let's wait a little bit to see if maybe it's going to change before we make that announcement and put it out. And then we've got to shift. We do know this is that our schools, and I like what you said, Shauna, did we get a summer? It does not feel like that if you are a school-based individual, because as we moved into the summertime, teachers were already beginning to plan for 100% or hybrid. They were thinking that way. Administrators were already starting to build their master schedules. And then when we had COVID cases rise, in July 23rd, we made a change. All of our secondary schools that were planning for 100%, we changed to hybrid. So the game changed, and then they had to change. They had to send out a different survey to all of you. This, for some families, was great. And they said, thank you, because now I sent in my survey before saying that I want 100%. Now that you're hybrid, I read the plan, I'm more comfortable with remote. Other families said, well, I already sent in my survey on July 8th and I'm good, so I'm not gonna send in another survey. So as we creep towards the beginning of school and the students received their schedule and they saw they were in person when they asked for remote on the first survey, of course, that's when the communication with the school was, well, the school said, you didn't complete the survey? And the family said, yes, I did. I completed on July 8th. And then the school said, we sent out a second survey. So it is difficult. And I will say that our schools are doing the best they can do to keep up with that and send communications to their community. At the same time, because we are in the summertime, or there were many families that said, I don't read communication in the summertime. So they were a little bit behind the ball there. So this has been interesting. We have a tremendous communications department. If you don't know, Tammy Schiff and Cameron Bell and everyone else, they are on the game and they know what is going on. It is very difficult, once again, to have a communication that goes out district-wide that meets the needs and possibly the different modifications from all the different schools. So we really rely on the schools to do that. And the one thing we try to be on board with is we do have community updates that we're sending out. And those do go out on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Mondays and Thursdays. And we really try to fill those community updates with pertinent information that all families need to know about. Of course, high schools, middle schools, elementary kids are trying to do the same thing. But we're really trying to create one central place where we send information out. And a parent can say, I'm going to keep those. And I can go back and refer to that information. But at the same time, you can imagine I get emails and a parent says, well, this is what you sent out last week, but now it has changed. And it's changed because of, once again, the changing percentages typically from one school to the next, the amount of families that are choosing remote or in person. So we are definitely doing the best we can. We have tremendous people that are in charge of communications district-wide or school level, but it is difficult, once again, when the numbers and the percentages keep on changing as we move. So I just want to apologize for that if you're feeling some frustrations around that. I will say this, if you're feeling like you're not getting the kind of communication you want, I did have a parent email me last night and was singing the praises of one school. Now this parent has two different students, one at one high school and one at another one, was singing the praises of one and then had some criticisms of the other one. That does help us as a system because I was able to follow up with that principal this morning and do some comparison and ask that person to look at the website of the other school, look at some of the communication, and now the communication is going to be at the same level. So when you do provide feedback to us, just so you know, it does give us the ability to improve our practice. We like that, we appreciate that.
And I would advocate also for kind feedback. So I did talk to a couple staff members at the Ed Center and Communications the other day as well. There really isn't any need to be abusive to staff there, but give your feedback and advocate, that's totally fine, but not in an abusive way. We'll save that for snowstorms. So later, joking. All right, Christopher, this one might be one that it's getting more clear now that, you know, we've started school, but our teachers, are they teaching both hybrid and remote students at the same time? Or are there two different teachers? How has that been split up, or is that decided per school?
So I'll talk first by speaking about secondary, and then my colleague, Chief of Schools Elementary, Renee, can talk about the elementary level. So at the secondary level, once again, our model is hybrid. So there could be an A group of students and a B group of students. The A group of students would be in person on maybe Monday and Tuesday or Monday and Wednesday. So the teachers are teaching those A group students. Their B group students, or the other half of their classes, they would be in a remote environment. And in that situation, we have schools that have decided that an asynchronous environment for those remote students is the best model of delivery of instruction. There are other schools who have said, we're going to try to utilize live streaming. So when there is a student that is in front of that student in the classroom, they're also going to invite their remote students in a live streaming manner in the classroom. So that is a new practice for Jeffco, and those teachers are going to be engaging in that and really working through that. There could also be teachers that are working in that hybrid environment that also have 100% remote classes. And once again, that depends on that percentages I was talking about. The percentage of remote students in a school or the percentage of in-person students. So we do have some dynamic teachers that are doing that. They're teaching students in front of them. They're also engaging with their students in the remote environment, those AB students, and they do have courses that are 100% remote. We also have, and Renee talked about it before, teachers that are 100% remote teachers, and they are teaching their students that are also 100% remote. So that's how dynamic the secondary level is right now, talking about our 6th grade through our 12th grade. And then Renee can speak to elementary.
Of course, we're not using the hybrid model for elementary. We are bringing all students who would like in-person learning back. And so we've also been assigning kids to in-person and remote, and it looks different in every building. It's just kind of a numbers game right now as we're trying to balance all of that out and the needs of families and staff. Moving staff around, we've had to be very creative to meet the needs of the community. Some schools have come together and have one teacher for a grade, but they've got students from different schools that are part of that class in the articulation area. Other schools have really tried to keep it just for the students in that particular school, and the teachers are actually asking many times, no, I want to teach in both environments. I want to have my students with me. And if we can make that happen, we're trying to support them to make that happen too. So it's really based on the numbers that people choose for in-person versus remote, and then organizing all of our resources within articulation areas as well as schools and the district to create those groupings and meet the needs that parents have asked for. It's been tricky, and we're still balancing out all of that right now.
Okay, thank you for that.
And one more thing, Shauna, just to address this, the complexity continues to change because families, because of family circumstance or the survey I talked about, they're saying, I would like to now change. Maybe there was a family and they're saying, I would like to go from in-person to remote or remote to in-person. And you folks know, many of you are parents here on the call. We started school on Monday. So students have been rostered. Teachers are ready to go, they're planned, and now families are saying, no, I really need to change this. So if you have a school where it is really set and it is tight, and we have remote teachers and in-person teachers in the 4th grade, and there's 100 students and 75 are in person, that means 3 teachers are in person, 25 are remote, 1 teacher is remote. When you start having students change, then that changes the parameters. 1 teacher's class sizes will go up. That creates some concern and some risk for us as the cohort sizes rise. On the other side of it, as the remote numbers rise, teachers will say, well, hold on, I now have 50 students in my class, even though I'm remote. This is becoming difficult. So as you can imagine, as this is happening now, as school is beginning, this is just one more factor that our schools are now trying to manage.
Here's another one about some schools, and I think we're talking about secondary here, so changing to the quarter system. How does that work for AP and IB classes and the test? And some students will have completed the class months before the test.
Yeah, so what Sean is talking about, everyone, is, so if you take an advanced placement course, you take that course for the entire 18 weeks, then at the end of it, there is an advanced placement or a national test that you take. You can score 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So we do have 3 secondary schools that decided to move on a quarter system. So a semester system is a student would typically take 6 classes in that semester. A quarter system is we're going to take that 18 weeks and truncate it into 9, and the students are just going to take a course every single day, double time for 9 weeks, and then take the final exam, which means those courses will end around October 15th, right in there. And the concern Sean is bringing up is, if I'm a student that takes that 9-week double time course, now I have 9 weeks until that AP exam. So what these schools have done is they have made the decision around the quarter. They think it was a better situation for their community and students. If the student would take that course, the first 9 weeks, in that gap, they're talking about enrichment opportunities. There's an asynchronous day on Friday for learning. They were talking about access periods, opportunities for students to keep engaged and keep up with that learning so they're ready to take that AP. There could also be some courses or some seminars before the exam just to refresh and get that information back in the students' head. So that's what those schools are doing. And we do have 3 schools in Jeffco that have decided on the quarter system. There are benefits to that I could talk about more in depth, and there are also drawbacks. And I would say that about any system right now in this pandemic.
Good answer. All right, so how are school lunches, breakfasts available? We have actually just, shared the information about the free and reduced lunch program on our website too, but how are they available during the hybrid models to secondary students? In the timing with classes, so there's a timing window that seems a little off compared to classes. What if they aren't going to school on that day? Who can pick up meals, and can they pick up more than one?
I can address some of those questions. So I'll start with the who can pick up meals. So during the spring, when we moved into remote learning, federal government provided waivers for school districts from the Healthy, Hungry Free Students Act. I apologize if I'm misnaming that. That waiver is no longer in place. So because of that, those who can pick up the lunches are the students themselves. So they are the only ones who can pick that up if we do not receive that waiver moving forward. Regarding the timing of, and there will be grab and go sites for students who would like to get a lunch on their off day, their remote learning day during the hybrid schedule, or if they are a remote learning student, where they will be able to go and pick that up, and they would need to enter their student ID number. So if they qualified for free and reduced lunch, that would be a free meal, or they could go and pick it up and pay for it. Regarding timing, and Christopher, you might actually be able to speak more knowledgeably about this, but my understanding is secondary schools specifically are shortening the schedule of their day, and the lunch periods would be after the academic day has ended. So students there would not be a conflict with any scheduled classes. They'd be able to get their grab and go lunch there. Christopher, anything that you would correct there? No, it's okay. I got that information from Gavin Goodrich, so I trusted it was accurate.
Okay. Here's another one. What is being done to ensure academic standards are met? And this particular writer was concerned that 3 hours of instruction a day, 4 days a week is not enough to meet academic standards.
Yeah, there's two questions there. I'll start with the academic standards being met. This year, teachers have been trained in the use of proficiency scales, something that we've been working on for the last 2 years to develop. And it really allows us to have high expectations for all students in all grades for each content area that's consistent across the district or speaking the same language. So we're pretty excited to roll these out. And this was, we were able to do that and during the professional learning days for teachers just recently. Basically what a proficiency scale does is it outlines the end of the year academic expectations for a standard within a grade level content area. So the scales will go from a 1 to a 4, and it builds out a learning progression for the skills that the student will need to acquire to meet the standard for the end of the year for that content area and that standard. And so once we have these proficiency scales in teachers' hands, they know how to use them, they can pair them with the assessment data that they'll pull together at the beginning of the year, and you've got a really nice match to plan for student learning it's immediately relevant to each student's individual academic needs. So that's going to be a really helpful tool for us to very quickly identify learning gaps. And then for the synchronous instruction, the 3 hours of synchronous instruction was put forth as an expectation for students learning in a remote setting. So this would be combined with asynchronous learning. That's asynchronous wouldn't be scheduled at a specific time, but there would be assignments and work that students would be doing offline, not when they're with their teacher for synchronous learning. So that would fill up the rest of the students' learning across the content area. So we should be able to provide a full experience for kids that way.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, here's this next one here too. What community level COVID-19 infection rates would prompt a reevaluation and closure of in-person learning? And I'm assuming, Julie, this is going to be not our school's percentages, but I don't know, maybe we go wild here in Arvada and all of a sudden we fill up the hospital. So what's the level?
I don't think we know that level exactly yet. And that's because first of all, we're looking for that new guidance to come out from the state within the next week. They will be much more specific on when we need to be able to go to all remote. Right now, what I can tell you is that we're looking really good. So when we take a look at some of the measures, and I can answer this because today I was just talking to the epidemiologist over at Jeffco Public Health, which I talk to often, but we were talking specifically about where our case rate is. So right now, in order to be in the safer at home stage, we need to see no more than 580 cases over a 14-day period. Right now, we currently have 372 over a 14-day period. So that's approximately 26-ish a day. In order for us to be able to move to the protect your neighbor phase, we're going to have to see 290 cases over a 14-day period, meaning 20 or less per day. So we're looking at a good spot where we could be moving hopefully closely, as long as the community continues to be dedicated towards, all the mask wearing and social distancing. We did talk a lot today about how we continue, though, as they're doing case investigation and contact tracing, they're continuing to see the majority of cases that are coming from private and social gatherings, and not very many coming from businesses. So they're still concerned and trying to get out education that comes from, that teaches our communities that those private social gatherings are really where they're starting to see a lot of the cases. So I think as we see, hopefully we continue continue that case rate, we'll be able to move into that next phase, hopefully the protect your neighbors phase. And then, obviously we don't want to go the other direction, which would push us back into the stay at home phase, where we would have to be all remote.
Okay. Here's another one. So this one's just kind of broad. There's a lot of rumors that are going around about where did our CARES Act dollars go? So can you tell us how much we got and what was it used for?
So I can talk about that. So there were two funds, the CARES Act funds and then the ESSER funds. So we had allocations from the state to Jeffco, and it was around $40 million with an additional $6 million, $7 million for the ESSER funds. And originally when the funds were allocated, it was very specific how funds could be used. And it was for new programs that came up and started because of COVID. And that was pretty huge impact for schools because we had already started programs, the lunch program. We had already started helping and assistant programs for the internet, like we talked about, technology. So there was a change we were grateful for, and it was that we could take the funds and start using those expenditures for funding that, or expenditures we had started beginning on March 12th when we switched into a remote environment. And that could have been for professional learning for teachers is another one, along with PPE. So we were able to start using those expenditures. And the first $20 million, we did have to be very specific about it as we sent that into the state and the federal government. This is how we spent the money. So our financial services department did a great job collecting that information, how we had spent that money, and sent it in. So we did spend half of that allocated money in the spring through the summer, and now we do have the remaining of the reserves. But as you can imagine, we continue to spend money on PPE. We continue to spend money on professional learning. We have now expended professional learning that we have it for all of our staff, all of our employees. David Bell was talking about creating professional learning for guest teachers moving forward. So this is additional planning and additional time that we need to be engaging in Jeffco in order to have the quality and safe environment I talked about before. So that's what these funds are for. And we continue to spend them. As Julie Wilkin talked about, one of the criteria is we have to have a certain amount of PPE in our school district. So it is hard to come by at times. It's hard to find certain personal protective equipment. So Julie and our budgeting and purchasing department are looking far and wide to make sure that we continue to stock our warehouses with these products. But you can imagine there's also some price gouging that is going on, and rates are increasing. So we do a great job in those departments to not only find the PPE, but then find the right pricing to bring it in and continue to make sure that we hit that marker, one of those markers that Julie had talked about.
Thank you for answering that. There's always rumors that float around, and we like to make sure that those things are addressed so that we have correct answers, so that when we do see incorrect information on social media, it is PTA members' job to go ahead and correct that. John and I, of course, have done for years advocacy around school funding. Christopher, I will never forget the support you gave us with Amendment 73. Thank you very much for that.
Just so you know, Shauna and Jonna hired one of my best friends to as the campaign manager. So that's why Shauna just said that.
Well, that's also a conversation that we're going to have going forward. So I will look forward to engaging with you and the rest of the staff about that as well. I'm going to go ahead and ask a few more questions. It's becoming apparent that we will not finish this by when we need to end. So I'm going to invite everyone to type every question that you still have. Go ahead and put it in the chat. Christopher and Helen have both committed to making sure that those questions are answered later so we can get the questions in writing, and we will put them on the website along with this video so that we have all of that. So thank you very much, Christopher, to you and your staff for being committed to doing this. And I'll just ask one more, see if we can get through one or two more. I will stay online too, so you can type as long as you want to, asking questions, or you can also email me, president@jeffcopta.org, with more questions as you think of them. This person asked about the county case numbers and a threshold, and was wondering if we could flip to 100% learning in person. Will that happen?
So I can go back to this, kind of hits on how I answered the previous question. So right now, again, we are currently at 372 cases over a 14-day period, which is approximately 26 per day. In order to move into protect your neighbor phase, we will need to see 290 cases over a 14-day period, or less than 20 per day. So we're close. We're really close. This was actually from a month ago at the end of July, we were looking at 200 more than this. So we were up to almost 600 over a 14-day period. So we've made huge improvements, down by over 200 from the end of July to the end of August. So if we continue to do that, and that takes our entire community to do this, continue with all of those mitigation strategies and the mask wearing and the social distancing, and try to limit the parties and private gatherings that Jeffco Public Health talked about. If we continue to do that, we could be in a very good spot so that we could go to all in person and make sure that the case period, the case positive case days go to 290 over a 14-day period. Again, that's less than 20 or less per day.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one more. We know that there's no one size fits all for families concerning remote versus in-person or hybrid. Will both options continue to be offered? And goodness, maybe we're looking at lots of changes in the future too.
Both, yes. Both options will continue to be offered. The one tension that I talked about is families who are looking to change from one model to the next, and how difficult that can be for a school that has their schedule set, their courses set, and they found that balance. But those options will continue. We will continue to have 100% in person at the elementary, hybrid at the secondary, and then 100% remote option at both. There will be a natural point either at the quarter or the semester where families will be able to say, I've been in a remote, but I'm feeling more comfortable now and I'm ready to go, and I would like my child to return in person. And that information is advertised through the school based on trimester, quarter, semester. So I'd encourage you folks here on the call and other people who are watching this down the line, just to check with the schools to determine when those breaking points are. And Shauna, we thank you once again for inviting us here and letting us talk and informing you of what's happening in Jeffco. We're very proud about what is happening. I want to tell all of you, we are very proud that we're proud of our county, and Julie talked about that, because of the rates of COVID. That's all of us on this call. You're doing all the right things. You're wearing masks to protect your neighbors. Because of that, we are in person, we are in school. There are risks both being in school, there are risks of not having students in school. And I talked a little bit about that in my video last weekend, if you watched that. And we are just proud of the fact that we are in person. We have an in-person option for our families. We're also proud of the fact that we've got a really solid remote option for our families. So we are always trying to create the opportunities for our families in Jeffco to take advantage of all the great schools we have and find a place that's really comfortable and meets the needs of you and your child. So thank you for that.
You all have done a phenomenal job of trying to answer all of our questions and be really transparent with us. So we are very, very grateful to all of you. So Christopher, Susan, Renee, David, Tom, Julie, you guys are wonderful. And we so very much value your time with us tonight and being so transparent and collaborative and making sure that you're willing to answer the questions. So thank you very, very much on behalf of Jeffco PTA and everyone who's in the call watching and everyone who's going to be watching the recording later. It'll be there. So we want to be partners with you. We want to collaborate and make sure that this information all goes out to families and do the best that we can to serve everyone in this district. We appreciate your work. I'm sorry you didn't have a summer. I'm going to cross my fingers and wish really, really hard so that we don't have that again. So I would ask that, I know instead of everybody talking over each other, can we all just visually give applause to our staff members as our thanks? So even if it's, so sign language too, yeah, we all know how to do that too. We appreciate you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am going to pop back over to our formal Jeffco meeting. So to ask if we have any new business that anyone needs to bring up. Speak now or forever hold your peace. If you have something, type it in the chat. If you still have questions from that you would like to ask of district staff, please also feel free to continue to ask questions. I will take them and we will get the answers and we will put those in there. Hearing no new business being brought up, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Oh, hang on, sorry, there's something in the chat here. Okay, beautiful. Oh, new AAVPs. So thank you, Mike. So it's not just AAVPs. Corey Bissell. So Corey has joined us as a JCEA rep. So on our board, we're very grateful. Corey also teaches art, music, and PE at Hackberry Hill Elementary. So you all know how much I love that school too. So that's me. Babette Norton, I want to acknowledge her. Jeanette Hageman is here too, so she's another one. Kirsten Boyd, I don't know that I saw Kirsten on here yet, but Kirsten Boyd is another one. Mike and I are having lots and lots of meetings for even more board members. Dr. Leach, I know that I need to talk to you about our website because we have a ton of special education resources on the Jeffco PTA website. Really excited about all of the fun things that you're doing and different resources that you've added. So we need to update our website to make sure that these things are very, very easy to find with our families. Anything else? Any other new business? Chat? Thank you. Welcome. Lots of congratulations and thank you to all of your staff. I know how busy you guys are, so thank you so very much for doing this for us. We promise to show it to everyone in the world, or at least everyone in Jeffco, or maybe we'll brag to other districts about our staff being better than theirs. All right, would anyone like to, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn the August Board of Directors meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Second.
Thank you very much. If anybody is opposed to adjourning, can you speak now or forever hold your peace? All right. Well, doesn't seem like we have any opposition, so we are approving this by consensus to adjourn the meeting. Thank you everyone so very much for your time. We appreciate you. You most certainly matter to Jeffco PTA. That's our theme, and we hope you'll join us for the fall conference that's about to be announced. And just FYI, Dr. Susan Leach has agreed to be our keynote speaker to kick off our conference. I know, right? So we're pretty excited about it. A lot of the things that she's responsible for at Jeffco are all of the things that we have made our priorities to take care of with Jeffco PTA during this term. So we are very, very grateful for her donating even more time to us. And thank you everyone. So we appreciate you.
Thanks, Shauna. Looking forward.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to sit here while you all leave, and you're welcome to continue to ask questions, whether it's to Kay, to everyone, to me privately, whatever you'd like, and I will just keep copying and pasting the questions. So, but the rest of you, feel free to go have a lovely night, and thank you so much. Okay, you can go ahead and go. I'll just copy and paste all of them.
Okay, adios.
I have an existing document.